All right, let's talk about the next system that makes sense in the dental office to have down. The first one we talked about was answering the phone. I think that's probably the most important one. The next one was goal setting and scheduling, so kind of together. I'll go deeper into goal setting, but I think you had to have that initial goal setting in order to know how you're going to template your schedule so you have room to put people properly. And then we talked about the new patient experience, how you bring people through your office. And this next one has to do with a couple things. The first thing is treatment presentation. Now, treatment presentation clinically is part of the new patient experience, and we can go through in more detail tips and tricks for that. But this is where you're taking pictures and explaining things to the patient. Treatment planning, as far as financial systems, can be done by the doctor, but a lot of times this is actually done by your treatment coordinator, front desk office manager, someone like that. I generally don't do the financial planning in my office. I'm not good at it, and I have more productive things to do with my time, and I have other people that are better at it. The other part of the financial policy system that I'm going to talk about today, we'll go over treatment presentation and tips and tricks for that at a later time. But the financial policy system is going to detail a couple of things. First, it's when your financial arrangements are made, what forms are you having people sign, what agreements are there, and where is that going to be scanned into the chart. It's important that you have a policy that clearly dictates, we signed this, right? And we have a paper that says you agree to pay for this, right, in final. You always want to have people sign a treatment plan saying we presented it to you, but the actually accepted treatment plan and financial part needs to be signed and scanned into the chart. This is important. If anything ever happens and people choose not to pay, you need some kind of documentation if you want to get your money. The second part of this is how you accept payment and when. Do you accept cash, check, debit, credit cards? What credit cards do you need to accept? To do this, you also need to know what are your merchant fees. I didn't know merchant fees when I first bought a business. I didn't understand this. When someone pays with a credit or a debit card, by default in the USA, the business pays the transaction fees on those in order to get that money. So when someone pays with a debit card, a lot of times that's the cheapest. Maybe it's 25% or 25 cents no matter how much it is. When someone pays with a credit card, especially depending on the type of credit card they have, you will pay more. The points that people get for travel and everything else like that, the merchant pays that, right? So if someone pays with American Express, it is the most expensive. So you need to understand how much you're paying for your merchant fees, or are you going to pass these fees off to the patient, and how are you going to explain that to the patient? It's becoming more and more acceptable in America to pass the fees off to people. There's certain times we do it, especially if it's an online payment. It's easy. If they want to pay online, and we call it a convenience fee. But in office, I think a lot of people are still used to not having to pay an extra merchant fee. Maybe that will change in the future. You need to know what those merchant fees are and keep them updated. Is the payment due at the time of scheduling? Is it due at the time of service, or are you billing them later, right? And you need to have a clear policy on this. In my office, our preference is at the time of scheduling, you make that payment to secure your spot in my schedule. Some people have a hard time with that, especially if you buy an existing practice or people have been doing it a different way, right? If you're a new practice and it's a new patient, you are kind of setting the rules, but existing patients, it's a little harder. So many times our preference is at the time of scheduling. If someone has dental benefits, we can say, well, since you're covered by 80%, we can secure your spot with your dental coverage, right? Some sort of arrangement needs to be made. If it's on the phone or something, taking a payment over the phone prior to, or at least when they come in, maybe taking that payment prior to them going back, right? You also have to let people know that this is an estimate. As many times as you can. Things can change. These are an estimate. We can square up afterwards, but this is the initial payment. You need to have a good, clear policy on that, because the default is that people are going to leave and then you're going to bill them later. And now you're chasing money, and it costs money to chase money, right? Will you have in-house payment plans? Will you offer someone the chance to do in-house payments? Or is it everything due upon receipt, upon appointment or scheduling, no matter what? In-house payment plans are tricky because people don't want to pay you. They're going to default. So we have a limit to what we will do, a certain amount. And we will only go 3 months. If it's a great patient who's done it before, we may extend 4 months. And usually our payments are not going to go over $500 or $600 a month, because that's a lot for someone to chew off, right? So we'll split stuff half and half and thirds as long as it's a certain amount. And you need this written down in a document, preferably the patient can see, so that they know that that is their choice. Is there a service charge for doing this? If so, how much is your service charge for splitting up payments? Is there an interest rate on late payments, right? What happens if they're late? This needs to be detailed. Are you going to have external payment plans? And most people are. They're going to have CareCredit. They're going to have Sherry financing. There's a lot of them out there. You need to know what you're paying, because a lot of times these are interest-free. And what interest-free means is it comes out of your cut, right? So if someone's paying with insurance and it's already cut, and then you're paying with a service like that, and then they take another cut, now instead of your 20 or 30% off of your UCR, now you're at 35, 40% off your UCR for the same work. So you need to understand that, and the people in front need to understand that. What is the limit you're willing to do? How long is it going to be? And how are you going to explain this to the patients about the program? They will come in and train your team. But remember, the people that are coming in to train your team are training their team to their interests, not yours. Many times they're aligned, but not always. You need to define what your interests are. You need to know how much you're being paid. What's the minimum amount you'll fix? How it's on? Okay, cash discount. Are you offering a cash discount, right? It's easy to say yes. Oh, yeah, cash is king, right? With cash, I just deposit in the bank. There's no merchant services fees. Check's the same thing, but they're a little more wary. Is that check going to bounce or not? Debit card, great, right? Only 25% processing fee. I get it the next day. Credit card, less so. Financing, even less so, but at least allows me to do the work. You know, but you need to kind of know these calculations. It's not going to enter into it. You don't want to enter into every discussion, but you'd like to think about this stuff ahead of time. If you're going to do a cash discount, what is the minimum amount, right? Are you going to do a cash discount on a $20 copay for a filling? No, right? Are you going to do cash discount on people that have insurance? Because remember, now you're discounting your already discounted prices. Are you going to discount their copay or deductible and everything? That gets tricky, because if you start offering discounts, technically, if you give a discount to the patient, the discount comes off the total price. That means the insurance company also gets the same discount, or a piece of the discount, right? If it's a 50-50 split, 50% of the discount goes to the patient, 50% to the insurance. Is there insurance police that's going to come and arrest you? Maybe. I think Delta's got them. Maybe not a lot else, but if someone complains and there's an issue and you get found, technically you're not supposed to be doing that. Are you going to give a military discount, a senior citizen discount? Same question as the cash discount. Is it just for cash paying patients? Is it for aesthetic procedures that aren't covered? What is it for? So detail this and think through these and crunch some numbers. Look and see what you're comfortable with. How are payments entered into the PMS system, right? When people make payments, how is that going to be entered in? Now, most PMS systems have a way for this, but you will need to set up what payments are, right? It can't just all be payment. Is this a cash payment? Is this a check payment? Is this an insurance payment? How is this coming in? Where are your receipts placed? Where is the cash placed? What cash drawer do you have? what changes in that drawer, when is that reconciled and change added? You know, your petty cash drawer right there. How are you going to reconcile that? Where are the receipts placed? At the end of the day, who's reconciling the procedures done, the money taken in, the amount to be deposited, and the amount in the cash drawer, right? When and where are the checks deposited? Do you get a reader at your office? Do you take them to the bank? Who does that? Where do the receipts go? All these little things you can write out in this thing. You just need to think through it. When insurance checks are received, how are they entered and deposited? Will you accept the virtual credit cards that come with insurance? I'm going to argue no, send them back. I was just talking to a lady who's been an office manager for like 30 some odd years. Didn't like talking to young little me either. And we were just kind of going through how they put stuff into the PMS and get checks and everything. And she was saying these virtual credit cards are great because she can process them and she gets the money so quick. I said, yeah, but when you process a virtual credit card, you're paying whatever fee that is on the virtual credit card through merchant services. So now you have an insurance deduction, you know, negotiated deduction, and now you're paying 3 or 4% on this virtual credit card. If you just say, no, I don't want that, and send it back and sign a sheet saying you will never longer send me these things, you know, right of refusal, they'll send checks from now on, or they'll do electronic deposit, right? If you're doing electronic deposit, who is checking up on that? So this part goes to the insurance aging and reconciliation. And you have two choices here. One choice is to do it in-house. That takes training, and it takes somebody closely monitoring that insurance aging system, right? If there's any issues, you need to catch it. If you hire someone to do this and they quit paying attention, have a life-altering event, or they leave, I've had all three happen, now it's a crapshoot whether or not that stuff gets entered. And if you don't understand how to look through insurance aging, then you either need to figure that out very carefully or hire someone. So my recommendation is a company like eAssist that professionally does this and has checks and balances. And all you have to do is learn to work with eAssist. They will check everything for you. That way, if anybody ever gets fired, you still make sure you're getting paid. What are your write-off rules? And how do you categorize your write-offs, right? You need to have that listed out. If you're gonna give a professional discount to your friends and family, to employees, if you're gonna discount something, how does that get entered into your PMS system? There are defaults in your system, but you still need to write those out and explain what goes into each one of these so that people up front can do it. Otherwise, they get to choose where it goes and you really don't know where your money goes. That's where fraud can happen. When people have an opportunity and they see an opportunity and they have a need and you don't have any checks and balances, it allows good people to do bad things, right? Don't do that, have checks and balances. With your insurance aging, like how are you gonna handle that? You need to look at it yourself, but again, are you going to do your team or not? And after insurance pays, any balance that's there that's reconciled, either positive or negative, then goes into the patient account receivable or your regular account receivable. This is money you either have to refund or get back. So if it's refunds, how are you going to refund it? What's your limit? How much? When are you going to refund that money? How are you going to contact that patient? For us, if it's just a tiny bit amount, a lot of times we talk to them at their next cleaning. If it's a larger amount, we're going to call them and ask them. But additionally, I don't do any refunds. I don't write any checks until all insurance is cleared and all family accounts are paid, right? So if you're a family account and one person gets a refund and the other person owes me, you don't get a refund, that now goes to that other person. We're gonna call and talk to you about it, right? But you need to have this written down, otherwise your front office is gonna be guessing. When do you call on your accounts receivable? How do you call? What scripting you're gonna use? What letters are you going to send? And at what point are you gonna send them to collections? This is why it's important to have all your treatment plans signed and financial agreements signed ahead of time so that when it comes time for those collections calls that somebody has to do, you have all your ducks in a row, right? Collections calls are inherently uncomfortable. And here's another thing, you can hire someone to do collection calls. I recommend you don't. Make the people in your office collect the money. The same person that does the assigned treatment plan calls to collect the money. If they have to call to collect money, they will start being better at collecting at time of service, because chasing money is expensive and it sucks. What are your policies for sending people to collections, and who are you going to use? What are you going to do if somebody owes you money? You write it off, send it collections, then write it off, and they come back in the office. When it reactivates, does that reactivate too? The answer is yes. Sure, I'd love to see you for that emergency appointment. Go ahead and come on in, just to let you know you did have a previous balance on your account of this much that will need to be taken care of that morning before we can see you, right? When are fee schedules for insurance is going to be entered into the system? Every year when insurance is reset, they have updated fee schedules. They're not just going to send you, you have to request them. How are they entered, and who's going to be doing that? When are fee negotiations going to happen? You can hire someone out to do this, and if you're younger, I recommend you do. When is credentialing going to happen? Do you need a sheet to monitor all your credentialing? When are plans verified and entered into the PMS system, right? This is part of the health financial system. If someone calls with insurance, what's our verification process, and what are we entering into the system? What happens if someone's plan lapses? What are you going to do when that plan lapses and they still come in to get a visit? What's your language for telling them, hey, you now owe us money? Or if they didn't give you an insurance, what's your policy there? Do you have an in-house discount plan for cash patients? I recommend you do. I'll go through that at another point. I developed mine years and years ago, and now they have sales things that do it. You have to pay them a fee. You can do it yourself and not have to pay a fee. What are the rules for it, and how is it administrative? And then at the end of the month, who takes the bank statements and all the receipts and reconciles everything to make sure all the money that came into the practice made it into the bank, right? Again, this is busy work. And initially I did it for a long time, and I liked doing it because I learned how to do it all. I don't do it anymore. I've written policies that someone else does, and I monitor those systems and look for my key performance indicators again. I want to know, how much do we take in, how much goes into the bank, what's our insurance aging, what's our patient aging, and then start looking at phone calls. If there's any problems, we can dig deeper. There's a lot of sample financial programs out there, or financial policy statements out there. Read through all of them. But when you sit down to develop yours, sit and develop it very thoughtfully, step by step. And remember, this is a living document. So as you go, when you run into a problem and you make a decision, reflect that in your standard operating procedures. Have a yearly review and read through of this with your team to retrain. When you have initial training, that's printed out and that's there for them to read and go off it. That is your Bible. Remember, the last thing is, something I always like to tell people, don't legislate to the exception though. If something has happened once or twice, make the decision and move on. If it starts happening frequently, then it's time to make a decision on it that is written so the rest of the team can understand it and makes it into the system and the standard operating procedure. So like and subscribe. The next thing we want to go over is that treatment presentation, especially the financial presentation part. But I hope this is helping out. If you have any questions, comment below.